Hello, friends. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have another very special guest for you. Her name is Dr. Sarah Machell, and she is a medical director and the vice president of medical operations for Vetster. And I'm very excited to have her on the podcast today, and I can't wait to get to know her with you. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Julie. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So can you start by telling me your veterinary story? Like, I always like to hear how people got into this profession and, just briefly. You don't have to tell me at all, but whatever you want to share.
Of course. Well, thanks for asking, because I love to share the story. So like I think many veterinarians, I was kind of afflicted with wanting to take care of animals as a very young child. As I recently shared in a written interview, my mother, if given the opportunity, would tell everybody that at the ripe old age of 4, I announced to her that I was going to be a veterinarian. So I realize not everyone in our profession is like that, but a lot of us are. So
yes, I think many of us start young like that.
And so I started working, as a high school student at my local small animal practice. Really, that exposure for me was critical to sort of set my mind and course. And I worked at that practice all the way through university, my undergraduate degree, and then through vet school, and even until I graduated, just as a sort of a do everything in the practice kind of person, right?
Nice.
And so I graduated from veterinary school, the Ontario Veterinary College, in the late 90s. I hate to admit that now. But I've always, I grew up in a business home. So nobody in my family was in veterinary care or in the veterinary industry whatsoever. Both my parents worked for large corporations. My dad worked for IBM. And so I kind of grew up in like the business world, but I was always really passionate about animals and animal care. So fairly shortly after graduation, I always, part of my goal, I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I also wanted to be a practice owner. And so I established a small animal GP practice just outside of Toronto. I am Canadian. And so I established that about 3 years after graduation as a solo practitioner, and had really wonderful journey with that experience. For 18 years, I grew that practice and relocated it. And 2018, I found myself in a bit of a lull, and really starting to explore other things that I could do within this career, really finding like, I almost conquered that challenge. And so
that's kind of like my story. That's how I got into this. I was like, I've run the practice. I know how to do that. Let's try something else. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. Well, and prior to that, actually, I will have to say, I started to be even more interested in businesses outside the traditional model. Frozen. Am I frozen for you?
A little bit. You kind of froze, but now you're going. Now you're okay.
Okay, it's a bit. I live in the country, and it's a bit breezy. My internet is satellite driven.
I can hear you fine. So even if the video freezes a little bit, as long as I can hear you, I'll be patient.
Okay. Okay. So prior to when I really sort of decided it was time to retire from practice ownership, sort of in late 2016, 2017, I started to, I was introduced to a young woman who was really championing the telemedicine opportunity for veterinarians here in Canada. And I became really fascinated sort of with this mode of delivery of care. And it really started to recognize the opportunity for virtual care providers in terms of as veterinarians, the opportunity that might exist for us as veterinarians, as practice owners. But in addition, really recognizing that the internet has no borders, and the chance for us as veterinary practitioners to impact the accessibility to care challenge that so many pets across the globe, pets and animals in general,
Right.
are faced with. So it started a little spark of interest and opportunity there. And then in 2018, when I sold my practice, I started doing some small animal welcoming across Southern Ontario. Got to visit lots of different practices. And that was really great for me because, I come out of school and it kind of got into my own practice, and my world got a little smaller. And so
Right.
for
For
a
all
couple
those
of years,
years, you do it the way you do it and you don't see other practices. Yeah.
yeah, and so I really enjoyed that time for those 2 years that I did that, and got to see and do. I also did some ER stuff that I hadn't really done as much of as a GP. And then the pandemic hit. And, I was also at the same time still doing a little bit of virtual care with another platform, not Vetster. And then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, all these niggling concerns that practices and practice owners had, and the challenges that they were experiencing, gasoline just got through on the fire, right? We see practices struggling to keep staff healthy, to be able to keep seeing patients, and telemedicine in both human and the veterinary industry just got pushed, as to the forefront of conversation.
Yeah, it was
And I found
really something that we had to do, right?
yeah, we really had to do,
How do we do
and
this?
very few practitioners really were very familiar with it, veterinary practitioners as a whole.
Right.
And we were kind of forced into figuring out what we could do, be that via FaceTime, be that, via some of the early companies that were out there. And so through this process, I found myself kind of championing in a lot of these practices because I was familiar with it, and because I had already, done a fair amount of work in this space. I found myself practicing in these or championing the opportunity with these practices that I'd been locuming in. And so that journey early in the pandemic really helped me to be really much more comfortable and confident in the telemedicine space. And then inadvertently, I got introduced to the founders at Vetster. And so Vetster, I will just share with you a tiny bit. So our two co-founders at Vetster actually come from the vacation space, the real estate space.
Okay.
But they are very familiar with marketplace opportunities. Are you losing me?
No, you broke up a little bit for a second, but I heard it.
Okay, so our two co-founders are tech and business people, and they personal stories, they found themselves in a position to sort of be reevaluating their serial entrepreneur skills at the end of 2019. And in early 2020, pre-pandemic, really started to explore the veterinary telemedicine space. Our CEO, Mark, himself, a busy executive, has a senior little doggy who had some pretty high needs veterinary care wise, and was really struggling, getting himself into his practice, meeting with his veterinarian. And it's sort of a light bulb moment for him that he was like, what's happening in the veterinary virtual care space? And
Wow.
so Vetster's business development began in late 2019, early 2020, pre-pandemic. And then, the proverbial perfect storm of
Couldn't have planned that any better, right?
right. Yeah, it was really,
You were
it's one of those
right
things you hate to say. Yeah,
Yeah,
location, right? And timing.
exactly. Yeah. Who would
And
have thought a pandemic would be the perfect storm to start a company,
right,
right?
right. And so I was connected with Mark Bordeaux, our CEO, because he doesn't have any veterinary background. But the two of us, my background and his, it was a really good meeting of the minds. And so I joined the Vetster team sort of late summer 2020, as they realized as they move forward in this space that they definitely needed some veterinary guidance.
Yeah, it'd be a
So I've been a
hard
part
thing
of
to
the
develop without a vet, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's been a wonderful experience for me since joining Vetster. And, it's really great for me to be able to see all of the things that I was passionate about in telemedicine, or the opportunity, the ripe opportunity for both veterinarians and pet owners, as we talked about already, have a really viable channel to really start gaining traction and getting legs. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
so
so what are the benefits for, well, we kind of know the benefits for the clients, right? I mean, I
mhm.
think that's a little bit intuitive, but what's the benefits for the veterinarians and the veterinary industry? Like, what do you see Vetster doing? Because this platform is designed just to be telemedicine. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right. So I guess I should perhaps explain our platform a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. Tell me about
It's,
it, because
yeah,
I don't
because
know any. I'm starting from scratch. I read a little bit,
yeah,
but you need to teach
right.
me.
So our platform is very unique to all of the competition, all of our competition that's out there, such that we have created a platform that's very sophisticated digitally, and has lots of tools embedded in it. But we are in the software business, and we've created this wonderful software piece that veterinarians can leverage our technology so that they can meet with their clients virtually online using our tools.
Okay, so I guess I didn't
So
understand that
we
part.
are what
You're
as
helping
a
vet
mhm.
clinics implement the telemedicine into their own practices. Okay.
And the individual veterinarian, not just clinics.
Okay.
So
Okay.
veterinarians, so as a marketplace, veterinarians can sign up and create a profile on our platform, and they can, and then they market themselves using our platform, and we do, marketing to pet owners to bring them the two together,
Oh,
and then they use our software service and our technology to meet virtually with the pet owner, and then the practice of veterinary medicine is at their discretion. And so we obviously the legalities in terms of establishing a VCPR and prescribing vary dramatically across state to state. And we help to provide veterinarians guidance on what is currently permissible and what isn't within their
okay.
states. But ultimately it's their practice, and they have to practice within the realm of what they feel comfortable with as well. It really does change depending on where you are if you bring your own clients to the platform. So as you described before we were sort of formally speaking, Julie,
Yeah.
if you bring your own clients to the platform, it's not for us to say whether you have already established a VCPR with that client, just an extension or not. So we leave that, up to the veterinarian's discretion.
Okay. So you don't
And so
regulate any of
there's a
that.
lot of flexibility with our platform.
Okay.
And so we definitely, it's up to us to regulate it, right? We are just the connection means.
Okay. So
Sorry,
it's almost like
lost
a
you again.
go-between for the veterinarians, the practices and the clients. It's kind of a,
Right.
like, to try to get them in touch with each other, or is it more
Right.
about the technology and trying to get the videos and all of that?
It's both, really. We are an enabler.
Okay.
Our technology is savvy such that pet owners find it easy to connect, easy to use. Veterinarians find it easy to use.
Okay.
But our goal is truly to support the veterinarians and the clients to connect. Because one of the biggest challenges pre and now even post pandemic is even worse, is really connecting with the veterinarian.
Okay.
And so, we work with both clinics and the individual veterinarians. So in some situations, we have arrangements and relationships with clinics where they will send their clients to Vetster, either to see themselves, or if they're at capacity or struggling to staff their clinic and they just cannot see a patient, they can send them to Vetster, because we have a whole host of veterinarians who are there to be able to catch that overflow
Oh, okay.
for
I
them.
can see that as an advantage.
We're very unique in that way.
Hmm. That's fascinating. So if you're working at a clinic and you're overrun with clients, and it's something that can be handled on a virtual basis, then you can send that client of yours to the platform because you're already a member of Vetster and you already use them for your own practice. And then that client, hopefully later on, will come back to you, I'm guessing, is kind of the idea. Or if it needs blood work or something, then it would come back to the clinic.
That's right. So a clinic can either refer to their own specific veterinarian on Vetster.
Okay.
So in some examples, you may have staff members who, for various reasons, can't be in the clinic, but they sure can support from home. So the clinic can refer to that team member to sort of say, okay, you know what, I want you to go back into your clinic. Our clinic, I want your pet to have a blood draw, urine sample collected, and x-rays taken, and then and then the medical record that's generated. So there's a medical record generated from each Vetster appointment, and that medical record can be shared back to the clinic, so that there's a knowledge flow, right?
Okay.
I met with Dr. Sarah. She tells me that you're going to be coming in, or let's arrange for you to come in so Fluffy can get a blood drawn and an x-ray taken as per her notes in her record, and then we'll organize the further care from there.
Okay, well, that's really fascinating. So what do you see? I mean, I understand now that you're saying that you can use it for your own practice. Like I was telling you, if I was out of town, let's say I was going to go to Florida for a month, which I did last year. I did some telemedicine back to my hospital while I was there. So this would be a platform for us to facilitate that, even. Like if one of your vets is on, a leave or has to stay home, if I had one day I had to call in sick because I had a cold and I wasn't sure it wasn't COVID. So I called in sick, but I was really fine.
Right.
And I said, I'm sneezing and coughing.
Right.
I don't want to come to the office. Can we do some telemedicine? And that's kind of how we did it. I had the techs at the hospital and I was at home, and we still saw patients that way. Just on one day, we kind of made it up as we go along. Is that kind of what it's to facilitate that kind of thing?
It can be, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's a perfect use case in my opinion.
Yeah.
And as a practice owner, so the veterinarians on our platform, we don't employ them. They're paid by the pet owner for the appointment.
Through Vetster?
And so
is there like okay, so there's a financial that goes back to the vet that's on there.
That's
okay.
Right. So each veterinarian on our platform can set their own consultation rate. We leave it to their discretion.
Right.
They're 30-minute appointments.
Okay.
So, it's surfaced to the client, your availability. So the veterinarian also has complete control over when they want to see appointments or not. There's no minimum number of appointments you have to take. That's not our role. This
Right.
is your practice on our platform.
Okay.
And so in your particular situation, if or a practice owner situation, that veterinarian may be having a sick day or on a leave, and you may not be compensating them for that time,
Right.
but they can get compensated per appointment directly by the pet owner, but then coordinate the aftercare or the follow-up that needs to be done in person with your clinic.
With the clinic. Okay. So do you see this as a way to solve our understaffing problem that we're having with veterinarians? I talked to someone else about telemedicine on another podcast, and my concern was, okay, if veterinarians go on these platforms and start doing virtual medicine, are we pulling them out of the practice? That was my concern. And then we don't have enough people in the practices. But she said to me, well, yes, but there are instances of people, like you and I, that we're pulling back from practice where we don't really want to be in the hospital, but we still want to work. So she saw it as a way to expand our market and use more veterinarians on the retirees or the people that don't have the physical capability to be, in the room fighting with a 90-pound dog. So is that kind of how you see it as well?
I love this question, actually, Julie, because
Good.
I think that you've really highlighted what a lot of the industry is terrified by with this
Yeah.
conversation. There's a fear that virtual veterinarians are going to be taking away from both the practice revenue perspective, but most importantly, from a practice staffing perspective.
Right.
And I would actually argue that it's fully the opposite, because I think that a lot of veterinarians, particularly as we look at how our practice ownership across the country, across the continent, it's changing. The shift to corporate ownership and consolidator ownership, and a lot of veterinarians like myself who were, fatigued in that role. But it doesn't mean just because people are selling their practices or stepping back from ownership, doesn't mean they don't want to continue to support their teams and their clients.
Right.
And this is a really nice sort of in-between way that practice owners who are retiring from practice ownership can still remain involved with patient care and supporting their teams without the physical burden, without, as you said, struggling with the dog, or even where they need to be able to do that.
Right. I could see it being something that, if a veterinarian's on leave for, let's say they had to have knee surgery and they can't work, for 6 weeks, but they still want to help their practice and they still want to make money and they still want to support their team at the hospital. I could see that being a really good place for this, because that's what's happened to me. I went to Florida. I was like, I really, I can still work. I'm not on a vacation. I'm just going down there to spend time with my parents and yada, yada. And so it was kind of a good way for me to keep working without actually being in the building, because there were still people in the building, I could see the ones that didn't really need me there personally. So I really see this as an interesting way to use something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly where I see the perfect fit,
Yeah.
And whether it be, those of us that might be kind of sunsetting our careers, but there's also an opportunity for the younger veterinarian. And it's, a lot of those younger veterinarians are struggling to juggle family commitments and certainly with COVID now, with all sniffles, as you described
Yeah, you
earlier.
can't go to work
How
if you have a
how do you
little bit of a cold, you got to stay home.
how do you juggle all those things and not want to let your veterinary team down because you
Right.
can't be there?
Right.
But then as an employer, how do you manage that? If your staff member is repeatedly unable to be there because of all these challenges. So again, it's nice because that veterinarian can be, well, I can see patients from home today, but my employer doesn't necessarily have to pay me for my absence because I will be remunerated by the patients that I see. And then I will send them back into the clinic for, the workups and the diagnostics that I need to complete the care.
I just got an idea as you were saying that. I could see when you said younger veterinarians, I know that there is a big need out there for some of the younger veterinarians to, get a bigger income or make more money to pay back their student loans and things like that. And wouldn't it be amazing? And I don't know how this would work with the day clinics, but if they could work like a night shift at home, if they would put in a few hours in the evening, if they felt like it, to make some extra money for their pocketbook to pay their loans, but also support their day team with the emergencies, pull some
Yeah,
of these people out of the emergency clinics that don't really need to be seen in an urgent way, kind of balance all of that. So it would benefit the
absolutely.
doctors, that want to work a few extra hours, but they don't want to be in the clinic, 80 hours a week, but they could work an extra 10 from home, make a little bit of extra money, as long as the only downside is if their practice didn't agree with that. I think it might be a little bit of a kind of a conflict of interest almost, maybe, unless their
Here,
day
I think
clinic
this comes back.
agrees.
I think this comes back to what we were talking about briefly before. Is this we as practice owners and even as a profession, we need to take a step back and really recognize that the fear, like this, there is really no conflict here. Like
Right,
that fear is unfounded because there's just simply not enough of us to go around. And
right.
so if we can get creative and supportive, there's a lot of good in this for everybody across the board.
Yeah, it's all opportunity.
Mhm.
That's
It is.
amazing.
And, I think one of the questions that your team may have sort of proposed prior to us meeting was, why is there such opportunity? And what did the COVID pandemic, really, really change? And I think it changed the sheer number of pets in households. There's like a ton of data and
Of
statistics
adoptions.
to show that pet adoptions and now pet relinquishment and everything, right? It all escalated and mushroomed. And there's really solid statistics out there that show that well over 50% of American pets don't have, and pet owners don't have a regular veterinarian and a
Wow.
relationship with a regular veterinarian. And that's where, the opportunity to meet with a veterinarian virtually, even if you're in a state where you can't necessarily prescribe medications, but that knowledge and that support, it's huge. That
Yeah,
opportunity to educate and support pet owners, to be the real Dr. Google instead of what Dr. Googling ends up misinforming people. I
right.
think that's huge for us as a profession to not be afraid of.
Yeah. So you'd really have to check into this in your state, in your area, with your practice. If you work at a day practice, how is this all going to integrate? So tell me briefly before we wrap up here, because I know you're on a time crunch. Tell me briefly how people out there, if they're interested in learning more about this platform, how can they get in touch with you? What kind of steps can they go
Yep.
to learn more?
Perfect. So our website has a whole bunch of information for both pet owners and veterinarians. So it's our web address is very easy to remember. It's Vetster, VETSTER.com. And when you land on the website, there's clear direction for pet owners and for veterinarians and veterinary professionals, in the top of the website, deeper in the footers of the website. There's multiple ways that you can learn about our platform right there. And then there's multiple ways that you can connect with our support teams to get more information and to be connected with our team that helps to support veterinarians. And so it's a very, I take a lot of pride, as do many of us, at how user-friendly our website is.
Yeah.
And we have a live support team available from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 days a week, where you can connect with a member of our team who can either help answer questions to veterinarians and pet owners, or put you in touch with someone deeper within our organization who can support further.
So then you can learn about how the legal stuff works. And because I would encourage people to check that out too, to make sure they're not getting into something that they're going to be, personally liable for. And I'm sure you guys have thought all that through and can talk to people about all those things. That's fascinating. It's an
plenty of
excellent
resources.
idea. Yeah, it's an excellent idea. And I'm definitely gonna check into it, because I think there's so many possibilities.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, thank you again for inviting me to this.
So I really appreciate you being here. I'm sorry it was kind of brief, but we can always talk again if we decide to. And it was lovely meeting you, and I'm excited to learn more about this. Where did that name Vetster come from? Do you know? Is there a story?
That's a story that I must leave from my CEO and my CTO, the two co-founders.
Okay, so they came up with it. Okay.
There is a story behind it, but it's catchy and I like it.
Yeah,
so.
it is. That's why I thought to ask, because I'm like, that's kind of an interesting name. Well, it was so nice meeting you. This is Dr. Sarah Machell, and it was delightful meeting you, and hopefully we'll get together again. And if there's some interest in this subject, we'll definitely gather some questions. So if you have any questions out there for me, you can email me or go to the website and check it out. And we can always compile some questions and have another go around with this, huh?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie. It's lovely to meet you. Have a great afternoon.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.